Hello everyone, thanks for joining me in this video. In respect to Nnamdi Kanu's court proceeding, tomorrow being the 6th of June, according to the ruling of the presiding judge, Justice James Omotosho, that slated the 6th of June for further hearings, we want to look into what we should expect as expectations, apprehensions, hopes are very high amidst misreactions. We will take just a little time to review what we should expect as it borders on the presiding judge, the prosecuting counsel, and of course the defending counsel, and Nnamdi Kanu in particular. It is very pertinent and important we study the previous cases determined or ruled by Justice James Omotosho and what that pertains to the case of Nnamdi Kanu and what possibly we might expect in the coming days. There is a popular saying that justice hangs on the integrity of the judge, emphasizing the crucial role of a judge's honesty and uprightness in delivering fair and impartial decisions. A judge's integrity is essential for maintaining public trust in the legal system and ensuring that justice is not compromised. I hope you get that. The integrity of a judge is fundamental to the administration of justice. A judge's impartiality, honesty, and adherence to ethical standards are essential for ensuring fair and equitable outcome in legal proceedings. Having said this, let us review the major cases involving Justice James Omotosho in the recent past and the determination of these cases and what that portends regarding the proceedings of terrorism count charges levied against the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, by the Nigerian government and the Prosecution Council. It's important to establish this premise so that we could understand the major role the presiding judge plays hangs on the integrity of that presiding judge. Very important. Very important. Let's start from this. Recall, in recent past, 50 members of suspected IPOB was arraigned in court by the Nigerian government or the prosecutor over alleged involvement in terrorism. And in the Federal High Court in Abuja, 50 individuals accused of being members of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, and charged with terrorism-related offenses were discharged and acquitted by Justice James Omotosho, who ruled that the prosecution failed to establish a case against the defendants, citing insufficient evidence and upholding their no-case submission. The court struck out the 3-count charges filed against the defendants. That is to say that James Omotosho has a clean record of dispensing the course of justice. It is quite clear and very exciting. His personality, his antecedents, his commitment and sincerity, of course, could not be doubted. These 50 persons accused to be members of indigenous people of Biafra was arraigned on terrorism count charges and other related charges bordering on terrorism. But as the case proceeds, presided over by Justice James Omotosho, he ruled that the Prosecution Council failed to establish a case against the defendants, citing insufficient evidence and upholding their non-case submission. Wow, that is very interesting. Now, you could now imagine or anticipate what could happen with the case of Nnamdi Kanu. That would be a very interesting moment to watch, honestly. Very important moment to watch. One of the key points raised by Justice Omotosho, acquittal and discharge, the court ruled that the defendants were not guilty of the charges. Insufficient evidence. The prosecution failed to provide sufficient evidence linking the defendants to the charges. Did you get that? No case submission. The court upheld the no case submission made by the defendant's lawyer, struck out charges. The three-count charges against the defendants were struck out by the courts. IPAP allegations. The defendants were alleged to be members of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra in courts. Terrorism charges. The defendants were charged with terrorism-related offenses, but unfortunately, the prosecution counsel could not establish any case against these 50 accused persons. Now, Justice Omotosho, the judge in the case, of course, has to do what is needful. Yes, in a recent case, Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court in Abuja ruled that the National Broadcasting Commission, NBC, lacks the judicial power to impose fines on broadcast stations. These decisions followed a lawsuit brought by the media rights agenda against the NBC, which has previously fined 45 broadcast stations of violating its codes. Wow, that is quite interesting. James Omotosho ruled that the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission lacks the judicial powers to impose fines on broadcast stations. Otherwise, of course, you recall when this happened, it was considered as witch hunting to silence the media and the right to expression by the people, by the Nigerians. They were fined 500,000 each. That is quite important. Now, the key points of Omotosho rulings are thus: unconstitutionally of NBC's power. Justice Omotosho declared that the NBC power to impose fines as outlined in its code is unconstitutional and violates the principle that judicial powers is vested in the courts. Is vested in the court. Wow, that is quite interesting. Ultra-viral Act. The Act found the NBC actions in imposing fines to be ultra-viral, meaning beyond its legal authority. Separation of powers. The judge emphasized that the NBC is not a court of law and therefore cannot act as a judge, complainant, and prosecutor in its own cases. Wow, that is quite interesting. Honestly, the court clarified that the NBC's role is to regulate broadcasting, not to impose criminal sanctions or fines. That is quite interesting, honestly. It is a very interesting moment and development. Wow, Justice James Omotosho is an exemplary and exceptional personality who stands in upholding the cost of justice, regardless, of course, whose all is God. He is there to dispense the cost of justice and to redeem the battered image of the Nigerian legal system. That is quite interesting. Again, we'll also review the last but not the least, and before we draw our conclusions, you could now make an inference from these few submissions of what to expect. I told you, and some people were like skeptic, that Nnamdi Kanu will walk out of DSS dodger, a freed man. At this time, no power can stop him, not even the pit of hell could stop him, as justice will soon be served.